Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Work at Home Rockstar Podcast. Excited for today's guest. She is a licensed clinical social worker, a holistic therapist, and the author of her book, Mental Health Uncensored, 10 Foundations Every Parent Needs to Know. So excited to be rocking out with Keri Cooper. Keri, you ready to rock?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Perfect. So we always start on a good note. So tell me a story of success in your business that we can be inspired by.
Great. So I'm a therapist, like you mentioned, and I work primarily with middle school, high school, college kids. And, I've been doing this for almost 20 years in all different aspects in residentials and schools. And once I had my own children, I decided to have my own business. And I started off really slow. It was like a side hustle for me. And I would work, 2 evenings a week. I made my own website. My friend took my photos and just, if someone found me, they found me. And that was great. And then when my youngest was about to go to kindergarten, I said, you know what? I really want this to be a business. Like, I really want to jump in. So I started joining all of these networking groups and I really started focusing on the business and how to grow it. And it took off and was like a thrilling ride to go on. And it's been, pretty amazing ever since.
Wow. Well, that's pretty cool because not everybody has it that easy.
Right. I mean, there were definitely some growing pains along the way, but I was really fortunate that I surrounded myself with some really good people just to bounce ideas off of. And I never realized when I was in my solo practice for a while, how important it was to really network, not for your business, but like for your own personal growth.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like it really, when it comes down to it, it is going to be the people that are around you because you need more business. You need people to come. So either the people that you're going to be surrounding yourself with are going to be clients or they're going to be referral sources for you, right?
Right. Or they're just going to be people that help you build yourself up, and when you have a question about business, instead of, trying to always answer it yourself, that somebody else may have the answer for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's, it's so nice to be in supportive groups where people just want to see everybody succeed and realize that there's room at the top for everybody. And I was just incredibly fortunate that I found some really good groups early on.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, and the way you started your business too was very good. I mean, basically you figured out what you would want and then built that, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And I think that's kind of the simple way to do it, right? Is that,
Yes.
if there's something that you want, then chances are there's somebody else. I remember when I was in school, they'd say, make sure you ask your question, because if you have a question, chances are someone else does too. And that's the thing, right? Is that we're always too scared to ask these questions because we think that it makes us look stupid. But really, if we have a question, there's something we need, chances are there's a whole bunch of other people that need that same thing too.
Yes. And that so many people are willing to help answer that question. People actually like to be helpful. If you ask them a question, they will answer it if they can.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's one thing that you learn really quickly from being in these business groups is that people, yeah, I mean, it's mostly ego, I'd imagine, but so what? Right? If people want to look smart because they're answering questions, then that's great. That's great for everybody. It helps everybody else. I mean, it's a win-win, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So along with the good note comes some bad notes as well. So I'm wondering, was there something that didn't go as planned and something that we can learn from?
I don't know if anything didn't go completely as planned, as much as some things were much more of a struggle than I realized they were going to be. I know what I'm good at, and I know where I kind of struggle, and where I struggle, especially is with technology. I remember having to do profit loss sheets and literally crying at the computer because I just couldn't figure it out. And, these were the types of problems that I was encountering in my business that I also didn't want to spend the time trying to fix. This isn't what I enjoyed. It's not what I like. I don't want to have to deal with my social media. I don't want to have to deal with my profit loss statements. And, everybody in my world of groups kept on telling me, if you don't enjoy doing something, you need to delegate it out. You need to farm it out. And I fought that for so long, thinking, no, I can't spend the money on my business doing that. I have to do it myself. And then one day I really just cracked and said, fine, I need to do this. And it was the best decision I've ever made, because now when I start struggling, I immediately call in another source and say, okay, this is what I need to get done.
Wow. Yeah, I would say that's one of the most common things I hear is that people would, if they were to do it all over again, they would delegate sooner. So you're not
100%.
alone.
Yes. And then when you delegate sooner, you're also delegating it to a professional who really knows what they're doing. I mean, my first
Probably likes
website I
it.
created myself. It was a horrendous process and the website was not good.
Mm.
So when I finally said, okay, I'm going to pay a professional to do this, everyone comments on my website. Oh, I love your website. I found you through your website. Like, we have to make the investment into ourselves in order to grow our businesses.
Yeah, I totally agree. And chances are also the person who you're hiring actually likes doing that as well.
Yes, they enjoy it,
Yep.
which is
And
mind boggling to me. Who likes doing a website? But there's people out there who do.
well, I'm one of them. That's my business. I build websites.
That sounds like torture for me.
No, well, but that's the thing is that we realize really quickly that the thing that we don't like to do, someone else loves to do it, and we probably
Absolutely.
like doing something that someone else hates doing too.
100%. Yes. Yes.
So why do you think maybe there's some people who are listening to this that are going like, I don't want to delegate. Well, like, why do you think people don't want to delegate?
I think some of it's control, definitely. It's hard and scary to give up a control piece of your business and to not know how it's going to turn out and to have to trust somebody else with that. Like, our businesses are, our children, like they're our babies. So to hand that over is scary at times. And the other issue is, sometimes it almost feels like more work having to delegate because I have to explain to somebody how I want it done. And if we don't have a clear explanation in our head, that's very hard then to communicate with somebody else. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes that prevents us from making that phone call.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that that's because there's different parts here. Number one is that, when you're starting a business, you probably should at least have a basic understanding of all the parts of your business, right? Because I mean that's your business, and how are you going to know that the person that you hired is going to be able to do what they need to do if you don't have any idea what's going on? However, on that same note, I have had people on the show who actually hired things out that they had no idea, and it worked out great for them because
Yeah.
they hired somebody that knows it, and they didn't have that control thing. They're just like, hey, I'm giving this off right away.
Right. Well,
So
I was lucky that I let go of the control for, building up my business. So by the time I wrote a book, again, technology is not my specialty. I was able just to blindly give control over to people to say, go publish this, go format it. I have no idea how to do this. And I don't really want to know how to do this. And I was able to choose good enough people to where it all worked.
yeah, yeah. So it's one of those things where you can end up getting into trouble doing it that way, but not if you've done your work in the networking side of it right in the beginning and you've put good people around you, because you're probably not going to be steered wrong by people that you know, like, and trust, right?
Right. Absolutely. And that's the thing. When you also start developing these relationships, then you're able to give them more and more things to do without worrying so much because you know how they operate, they know how you operate, and you're building this relationship together. Now with me and my website person, they just get me. And I now send them more and more things with less and less detail because I know they're going to figure it out. We have a great working relationship.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think you hit on it really, is that there is some work up front in the beginning. And
Absolutely.
yeah, okay, fine. You're going to take a couple steps back when you start to delegate. But like you say, now this person is a good working relationship and you don't even have to, they know what you're thinking, right?
Yes.
And it's a win-win because this person probably has their own business and,
Yes.
and they're
Yes.
and they're succeeding as well as you succeeding it too, right?
Absolutely. They all have their own small businesses and it's, business supporting other businesses and developing these really great bonds and working relationships.
So I'm now curious as to how you've assembled this band. You know, was it a situation where you were looking for something first, or did you just meet people and then you happened to find the people that you were looking for?
So when I decided to start growing my business and I joined, these networking groups, that was kind of step one. I remember very vividly sitting in one of the networking groups and all of these women would go around the room and talk about their events and, what's new in their business. And it got to me and I was like, nothing. like nothing is happening in my business. And all of a sudden I said, I think I need someone to help me, like a business coach or something. And like 5 women raised their hands. I was like, we have one, and gave me a name of somebody who was amazing, who really helped me so much. And it's through her that I was like, okay, I need a website person. I need this person. So I was able to start expanding. But it was that moment of saying like, okay, I'm not where I want to be. You women are. What are you doing that I'm not doing? And who can you connect me with?
Love it. Love it. That's a great way to do things. So you find the people that are where you want to be and then find out what they're doing. And chances are you're going to get to the answer.
And who they're doing it with.
Yeah.
Who do they trust? And this woman came highly recommended, and she has been, fantastic.
So what is your process around coaches, around, like, was that, it doesn't sound like that was a barrier for you. You just jumped right into that, right?
I jumped right into networking groups, and I, again, just developed really wonderful relationships with the other people in these groups. And we did a lot of things outside of those networking groups. We did a lot of one-on-one coffees and chats, and tell me about your business. Tell me how I can help you. How can you help me? And it's finding the other people with the same mentality as you, that you just want everyone to succeed and grow. So I don't think I have a traditional coach or mentor as much as I do have a business coach that I do hire. But in my industry, I also have a group of therapists that we get together for breakfast and we talk shop every once in a while. And it's really just building the connections and the relationships with these people.
So do you feel like there's any competition between the group of therapists that you're meeting with regularly?
So it's funny because other people have asked me that, isn't this your competitor? And I said, no, none of us are competing with each other because we're all unique. We're all individuals. Nobody is me. I am not any of them. And when somebody's seeking out therapy, they're seeking out a very individual relationship. I am not going to be everyone's cup of tea. So when someone calls me and I know this is not going to work, I know that I have another group of therapists that I can refer them to based upon personalities and what they need at that moment. So we're all so different that I don't feel like there's any competition. I feel like the better they do, the better for everyone else.
Yeah. And that makes you a resource too. Now people know they can go to you, and even if it's not you, they'll know that they're going to get something. They know that they're going to
Yes.
get their questions answered.
Yes, absolutely. And I try very hard. Anytime somebody reaches out to me, even if, I'm at capacity in full, I always email back with who I would refer to them.
Wow. Wow. Really cool. Now, what about tools? So, what tools do you use to get success in your business?
I am an avid reader. I absolutely love reading every type of business book. I am inspired by them. And that's really like how I dive in and start learning more and growing more. I think that you never know enough. So the more you can consume, the better your business is going to be for it.
Agree. Do you have sort of like time set aside for reading, or like how do you not spend
Yeah,
too much time, but spend some time?
right. So I actually, reading is really one of the pastimes I love and enjoy, and I do it both for business and just for pleasure. So at night on my nightstand, I always have like my fun book, I call it, and I personally like to, read mystery thrillers. So I always have that. And before I go to bed every night, I read there. For my business, I need to be a little bit more awake when I'm reading. And I am in my car a lot. I have 4 children. So I'm constantly dropping off at practices, picking up from schools, and I have downtime. So instead of being on my phone, wasting my time on Facebook or whatever else, that's the time I read my business books. And I'll write notes down in my car about what to come back to later and to work on.
Wow. 4 kids. Okay. So let's talk about that. How do you balance that? 4 kids and a business?
4 kids, a business, and a book, and book number 2 being written as we speak. So I'm really good with time management. I don't believe the thought process of I don't have enough time. I think you always do have time for what's important in your life. So I'm very disciplined. I have structure, and I say no to anything that I don't want to do.
Wow. That
And I think
is
that's really
probably
the
it.
biggest key.
Yeah.
And my children are also not overscheduled. We say no a lot to activities and events. They do really what they love to do, and that's it. We don't do more.
Okay. So this is probably going to be very good for your kids as well, because you're teaching them a very valuable skill. I mean, I think a lot of people stretch themselves too thin and then they get burnt out, right?
I actually write an entire chapter of it in my book, learning to say no and teaching your children to say no. And we see the parents all the time that say yes to everything. And at one time I was that parent, so I get it. I was on the parent teacher organizations. I was making cupcakes and, all this other nonsense that I didn't want to be doing at that time. Some of it, yes, of course I wanted to do. I wanted to be class mom, some of that, but all the other responsibilities, I needed to say no. And I was saying yes when I didn't want to, and I was burnt out and little patience. And that doesn't make you a good person. And it especially doesn't make you a good parent. And I see kids in my office all the time who are doing way too much because they feel bad to say no.
So what are some ways that you can say no and not feel bad about it?
I think one of the things that people need to learn to realize is that if it's not something you really want to do, you need to be able to say no and realize that you're doing what's best for you to make you a better human being and for your mental health, and that you don't owe anybody an explanation as to why you're saying no to something.
Hi, my name is Anik Malafon from Mastering Ascension, and I've been working with Tim Melanson and the Creative Crew Agency for a number of years now. Tim is my go-to guy for all things technology, and his team have helped me to really create the platform that I need that represents my brand, my message, and connects me directly to my ideal clients. What I particularly love about Tim is before he starts to dive into the technology, he always makes sure that he understands what your global view is, what your ultimate goals are. So then that way you're not wasting a lot of time back and forth switching around technology or platforms. He creates something from the get-go that is scalable, which is highly, highly beneficial for any business. What I've experienced from Tim and his team is they're highly responsive. They are a wealth of information, and they're going to offer you the tools that you need to really make the mark that you want to make in the world. So that's my recommendation for Tim. He's awesome. You're going to love every minute. You won't regret it.
Okay. So now when someone corners you and wants you to do something, like, do you sort of put them off first
No,
and
I
then say,
just
I need
simply
to check
say
my
no.
schedule? Or
No, I simply say no.
so you know what it is that you want to do before they ask?
I kind of know what feels right at this point and what I'm willing to do, how much time I'm willing to give to different things. Time is very valuable. So if I get a request, to volunteer for something, if it's something I want to do, yes, 100%, I'll make time for it. If it's something I have zero desire to do, I will simply say no. And I will not give an explanation as to, oh, I'm just busy, or I just can't fit it in. Just no. No is an answer.
Nice. Brave too.
Yes.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people, from what I hear, it's like a derailment thing. They're like, things are moving, and then all of a sudden they get derailed by something and this and that. And next thing you know, they're off on these paths, and they never really get back to the thing that they said they were going to do. So now they're just disappointing everybody, right?
Yes. And disappointing themselves. Even in my business, there's so many different things I want to do, but I put a lot of them on the back burner and say, no, not right now. It's not that time. It's not that moment. I need to focus on this task at hand. And I think sometimes, like you were saying, we kind of go all over the place. We try to do too many things, and it's just not possible.
No, every time you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to everything else that you could be doing, right?
Right.
And vice versa, right?
There's a great book that I read recently about business, and it talks about multitasking, and it says, you really can't multitask. It really doesn't work. You need to stick with one thing and do one thing well. And I think the name of the book was like The One Thing or something.
Yeah.
But it talks about one thing at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. I've read that same book too. The One Thing. And there's also, what is it? Minimalism or something like that. But there's so many books about that, because we can't really efficiently multitask. We have to focus on one thing at a time. Right.
And I think that also comes down to, you need to be able to kind of time block as well. That way you're not overrun with many different things. I know that when my kids get home from school, my work is shut down. I'm not on podcasts. I am not, taking client phone calls. I am at home. So boundaries are important.
Yeah. And the irony of it, I guess, is that people do respect you more when you are very clear, and also they trust you more because when you do say yes, they know it's going to get done,
Oh,
right?
100%. And it will get done well. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that I mean, this is probably a whole episode on this particular topic, because I see it so much in my family, my friends, and even myself sometimes, where you're just getting sucked into people's urgent issues, and now all of a sudden their lack of planning is now your priority, somehow.
Right. Yeah. I think there's a saying about that, about like, your lack of planning is not my emergency.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that that really, maybe from what I'm hearing, your process really is making sure that you know exactly what you're doing when you're doing it. And as tasks come in, you're not afraid to say no, unless it's something that is really awesome. and
Right.
then and then you'll figure it out, right?
Yes. Then I'll figure it out. Absolutely.
Cool. Right on. So, okay, let's get into your guest solo. I want to know more about you. What's exciting in your business? What's exciting going on right now?
Uh, so my business, I'm really so thankful that I have these amazing kids walk into my office and, come in here and unload their stuff. And we kind of give them the coping skills that they need and let them process out everything that's happening. It is not an easy time in this world for mental health right now, especially with COVID.
Yep.
And it really has impacted these kids. So I have to say, I was so thankful to be able to be here during the COVID times with these kids and walk them through all of this uncertainty and anxiety, and how do I make connections, and how do I deal with school and all of this. So in terms of, my therapy practice, I absolutely enjoy it and love it. And it just kind of goes, it's just on its own track right now. But what's exciting is that during COVID, I decided to write a book. I was kind of saying the same thing over and over again to a lot of kids and a lot of parents, and I could not fit anyone else into my office. And there was such a mental health need. I said, let me put something out there. That way, at least they have a resource. And I think through this book, what I really want people to understand is that mental health is more in your control than you realize. It really comes down to daily foundations, daily habits. So in my book, I talk about a lot of physical aspects which play into mental health. You need to be sleeping, you need to be hydrated, you need to be eating well, and a lot of, mental health habits, such as saying no, such as teaching our children boundaries, such as, teaching them responsibility and how to deal with disappointment. And if we get these 10 keys down, it's not such an uphill battle for mental health anymore.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So now, what have you seen since since the lockdowns and COVID and stuff like that? Like, how is it affecting the kids nowadays?
Massive anxiety, massive grief and loss. And I think that's a piece that we forget. These children lost many things that were important to them. They lost sports,
Yeah.
proms, graduations, getting driver's licenses on time, having time with friends, and they can't get that back. It's just a loss. And we have to be able to understand that they're going through a grieving process. And they had tons of anxiety. They would wake up every day and say, am I going to school today? Am I not going to school today? Am I going to get to have my game? Am I not going to be able to have my game? Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
And they had a complete loss of control, really.
Yeah.
And that's really scary. And it's scary for adults too. Adults, are definitely suffering as well. But it really has impacted them. And I think it's impacted each age group a little differently as well, depending on where they were developmentally and in their lives. So I think the recovery out of this is going to be very long.
Yeah. And I think that I think probably the reason why the kids had it so much harder is because most kids do have a fairly structured life compared to their adults, right?
They
I
have
mean,
overly structured life,
yeah.
So they didn't know what to do with their time. And I
Yeah.
remember being on Zoom with them, and I would say to them, like, what do you enjoy? What's your hobby? And I would just get blank faces looking back at me, like, what do you mean my hobby?
Yeah.
And actually that was a positive that came out of COVID, was that they started to learn to develop some hobbies and what they enjoy. I had some kids, dive into, woodworking and stock markets and, stuff they never had time for in the past. And they really actually developed passion.
Mm-hmm.
So there
Yeah.
was, some positives in this.
Yeah, I think that I mean, with every negative, there's always a positive. There's always a silver lining there. So there is something that's going to come out of it. They are going to learn some tools coming out of that. But I mean, I think a lot of it too is that we didn't even know what was going on. So, the parents probably weren't able to even really explain what's happening in a
Right.
way that the kids would even understand what's going on. They're all anxious about what's going on. What am I doing? Like, what, these rules don't even make any sense. No, like the parents would kind of go like, and normally we look up to our parents. I remember the joke is that like when you're a kid, you think the parents have it all together. When you're an adult, then you realize that nobody has any idea what's going on. And we were just following the blind, really.
Right. And that was made very clear during COVID. You're right. Parents had no idea and no idea what to say to these kids. And, also everyone's view was very different and it was a controversial time. And all of that has played into what these kids have felt. And, it's still impacting them to this day. And I think there's still a lot of fear of, is this going to happen again?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And I mean, it's not just the kids. The parents
Right.
probably thinking the same thing too. Like what is going on? And I think though that well, I hope that this is going to be good in the end, because I think that eventually well, parents had to learn a lot, right? We had to sort of learn, and I think that one thing that I can probably, I don't know if it happened to everybody, but I found that I spent a little bit more time with my kids during all this that was going on. And probably because I think I felt really bad for them. Like I've got well, we've got 3 teens. Well, one of them's 19, so he's gone. But I've got 2 teens in high school right now, and they were just starting high school when this whole thing happened. And just the high school experience. And I mean, I had such a great time in high school. I mean, I know probably not everybody does, but I did. And just like watching them lose it all and lose their sports and all that, like I felt terrible for them. And it was one of those things where I think I just kind of tried to overcompensate a bit and spend a little bit more time with them, and maybe plan some day trips. But I'm not. I think my instinct says that there was a lot of parents that probably didn't have the bandwidth to even do that. They didn't know what to do.
There were so many parents that were so stressed out. Kids were home, they're trying to work from home. I mean, spouses are home that maybe weren't always home. There was a lot of tension going on in houses. And it was ugly at one point, I think.
Yeah. And like for me, and like the whole topic of the show, I've been working from home for 15 years. So really it didn't affect me at all. I mean, I am a musician, so I did lose some gigs. I mean, it did affect me. But in terms of my work life, I still got up in the morning and went down to my computer. And, the kids being home, well, now I had to make lunches and make sure that they were fed and stuff like that. But other than that, really, it didn't affect me all that much. But I do know that there were a lot of their peers that, I mean, the parents would going crazy. So, I think that, you being what you're doing, what you're right now is going to be, I think we need probably more therapists out there right now.
We need so many more therapists right now. I mean, we're awful. We're awful at this point. And it's, it's hard because there's still a lot of kids that need help.
Yeah. So now your main focus is on kids, right?
Yes.
And is there like an age range that you work with primarily?
Primarily high school, college, many times some middle schoolers as well. And actually one of the newer populations that have been coming into my office quite a bit is the right after college time period, because that's a lot of transition.
Oh yeah.
And although we kind of at one point thought that in college, people really gained a lot of independence and, skills, that's not so much happening anymore. So it's a very rough transition into the actual adult world.
Yeah. Yeah, the world is very different now than it was, and I think I was kind of at a cusp, because when you think about the 50s, 60s, 70s, everybody knew what they were going to do, right? There was very defined roles of what you're supposed to do. And you had this script that you're supposed to follow, which is no longer there anymore. So now I think that that's probably playing into it, is that if you don't know what to do, like, people like certainty. And so if you've got no certainty about, oh, I just went to school, I got a degree and I can't find a job. What do
Right.
you do with that? Right?
Mhm.
So
Yes.
so now when like, who would be the ideal client? Like, so who would get the most out of working with you?
I mean, I think anybody who needs just a place to kind of dump out all their emotions and process them all out and learn how to do that. Anyone who has, anxiety and needs coping skills, anybody who just kind of needs overall, how do I handle this thing called life? Because it's crazy. And, especially middle school, high school, college years are not always easy. There's a lot going on there. And these kids are really feeling very stressed out and a lot of pressure. And social interactions are not like they were years ago with social media now. And that whole world has changed. And
Yep.
it's sad. It's sad, this kind of new norm of I'm not going to hang out with anybody. I'm just going to be on my phone connecting to people through a screen.
Yep. Yeah, I hear that. That's a whole other topic that we probably don't have time to talk about. I'd love to find.
That's a whole
Uh,
nother topic. Yes.
yeah, I mean, my thought is that it's just a different world. I mean, I look at them like, get outside, go do something, but nobody's outside. So what are they going to do?
Right.
Right? Their
Yeah.
friends are all in the phone. So
Mhm.
maybe that's okay. I think that a lot of parents try to kick their kids into something that is not, into a world that doesn't exist anymore.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I think it's a hard transition for parents to see. This is not how we grew up.
Mm-mm.
So it's a completely different world, and it's trying to navigate that world.
So how does a session with you look like, or how does working with you look like? Is it like sort of like weekly calls? Like, how does it work?
Normally it's weekly. I mean, there are some kids who kind of see me every other week, depending on, where they're at with everything. And then I always have the kids who, will bounce in every once in a while if they kind of come across something that they just can't figure out, and they just need some more skills. So normally, people come in here standard on a weekly basis, and kind of work through whatever's happening for them. It's all very different based on the kid that's in here.
Right on. So all this to say that, I mean, now we're coming back to, the people who are going to be listening to this are probably going to be parents who are going to be working from home. But I mean, really, when it comes down to it, business is all about mindset. And so if you're not in the right space because you're worried about your kids, which is totally valid, then you're probably not going to be getting the most out of your own business. And so, maybe this might be a good connection for you. Connect with Keri and find out how she can help your kids so that you can get to your
Or
business.
read the book, because the skills in the book are ones that parents need too. I mean, one of the big things I talk about is sleep and how important sleep is for mental health, for focus, which you can't run a business if you're not focusing, if your mental health is bad, if your patience is low. And it amazed me. We went out to dinner, a few months ago with a bunch of, adult friends, and they all talked about their sleep patterns. And like, these women didn't sleep until like 2 a.m. and they would be like up at 4 and then like back at 6. And it's like, what? Like, this isn't normal. How has this become normal?
Yeah.
So when I give tips in the book about your children sleeping, it's also about like, you need to be sleeping. Like, put your phone away, put it on do not disturb. Like, this is your sleep time. It needs to be prioritized.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, parents as well need to, read this book to gain a lot of their own skills. And also for their children, we could say whatever we want to these kids. At the end of the day, they see what we do, not what we say. So if we're telling our kids, get off your phone, and here we are as a parent attached to our phone, we need to be mindful of that.
Yeah. Eventually they're going to blow out and call you out on that.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah, they do all the time. Yeah. Yeah. Mom, dad, you're telling me to exercise. You're not moving.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, if we put ourselves back when we were kids, I mean, we didn't talk back as much, I don't think, back then. There were different consequences, but we would have, right? So how do we find the book? How do we get in touch with you?
Sure. So on Amazon is both the Kindle and the print version of Mental Health Uncensored, 10 Foundations Every Parent Needs to Know. And hopefully, probably by December, the next book will be coming out, which is an actual workbook for teenagers based on these principles.
Wow.
And then my website, Keri Cooper Holistic Therapy, is the great way to find me. And I'm on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, even though, I don't like doing that. So somebody else runs that for me. But all my information's up there too, and some good articles.
Awesome. This has been a lot of fun and very informational. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for rocking out with me today. And to the listeners, make sure you subscribe, rate, and comment, and we'll see you next time on the Work at Home Rockstar podcast.